Members of staff, members of the gallery, welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday the 28th of January, our first council meeting for 2020. I'd like to open that by acknowledging the land we meet on today is the traditional land for the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. We read also the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Okay, on leave we have nil, and apologies nil. Declaration by members of any conflicts of interest. Are there any to be declared tonight? Right, being the case, we'll move on to the confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council for Tuesday the 17th of December. Anybody wish to move them in their current form? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to speak to it? Any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Thus become the record. Public question time. Item 6.1. We have to open that a couple of answers from the last meeting where questions were asked from Mark Standen regarding the relocation of the depot operations to Campbelltown City Council depot. And read you the answer. The question was, when John Street depot was closed, depot operations were relocated to Campbelltown City Council depot. At the time, elected members were assured there would be efficiencies associated with this move. The answer is provided in two parts. Question one, was the ongoing net difference in depot vehicle fuel costs since relocating to Campbelltown? The answer, the council's depot operation relocated to Campbelltown on the 15th of April 2019. Fuel costs have been reviewed for the period April to November in 2018 and 19. The overall net difference in depot vehicle fuel costs since relocating to Campbelltown in April 2019 shows an 11% increase in fuel costs and a 15% increase in the quantity of fuel consumed. Question two, what is the net difference in the depot vehicle's carbon footprint as a result of this fuel difference? Answer two, vehicle emissions increased by 12% following the move to Campbelltown, which is a result generated using calculations for carbon footprint using generic emission factors for light diesel vehicles and heavy diesel vehicles. So they are the answers to the questions posed to us before. Thankful for the staff to provide those to us. I now ask whether any other questions in the public question time period of the meeting. On the gallery got a question for public question time? No, if not, I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is petitions. We have nil, and deputations we have one from Mr. John Lamprey about changing the local road speed limit from 50 kilometres an hour to 40 kilometres an hour. I now invite Mr. Lamprey forward to the Deputy's chair. And for the purposes of the minutes, if you could state your name and address. Mr. Lamprey, if you could just state your name and address.
It's John Lamprey, 25 Athol Avenue, Prospect.
Thank you very much. And you have 5 minutes to talk to us.
So this won't take very long, what I would say anyway. Mayor and councillors, I'm here to raise concerns re the manner of the introduction of the proposed 50 to 40 speed limit change within the Prospect Council area. To start with, let me say that I'm in favour of improving road safety and safety initiatives, providing they're based on sound analysis and scrutiny of data and facts, not opinion and emotion. I'm concerned that the council is voting tonight on this proposal based on a flawed survey with little to no statistical information and analysis within that survey. I believe the council should be basing its policy decisions on facts, relevant statistics and statistical analysis. Regarding the survey, I believe the results from the survey are at best tainted by the way the survey has been presented and worded. I'm not used to doing this, so if I'm being overly critical, I understand that I'm not supposed to be.
You have more than free rein, Mr. Lamprey.
Okay, thank you. Yep. I believe the results from the survey are at best tainted by the way the survey has been presented and worded. It appears to have been written to achieve a yes vote. I'm surprised the results were as close as they were from this survey because of the way that it was being presented. To be an accurate and unbiased survey, I believe it should not have any statements or comments that are not relevant for someone to come to an informed decision and conclusion to make a fair assessment and answer to the survey. I believe the question asked in the survey itself was quite relevant and was fine. It was the added paperwork that was with it that had comments in bold lettering at the top: safer speeds equals safer streets equals safer cities, which is true, but it doesn't help anyone to make an informed decision on whether they should be voting for or against the reduction in speed limit. It really is irrelevant for someone to help, or to help someone make a decision.
1 minute more if you need it.
Oh, okay, sorry. And same with research estimates that a reduction of 5 kilometres an hour in average travel speed reduces urban casualty crashes by about 25%. That, once again, is probably true, but as far as I can find out, there haven't been any casualty crashes within the Prospect Council area in recent times. I haven't been able to find out any statistics from the council. And so it really should include relevant facts such as the amount of casualty or serious crashes on the Prospect Council road network over a 5 or 10 year period, for example, the reduction of casualty or serious crashes in the existing 40 kilometre an hour zone, any other statistics or data that are relevant, and not estimates or irrelevant statements within that survey or the questionnaire. And that really is my concern.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming and talking to us about that. I'm going to see if there's any questions from elected members of the deputy. Are there any questions? Councillor Root.
Thank you for coming along, and thank you for raising some good points. Just a question about where you think maybe we should go from here then. Because I hear that you're supportive of maybe what the survey is trying to do, or the motion.
Yes, most definitely.
You're just concerned about the theory that sits behind the survey. So what do you think we should do from here then?
Well, as I said, I believe that the survey was tainted, and really it should be redone, and redone giving people the information they require to make an informed decision. Because the people making a decision on that, the information that was provided with the last survey, they see safer speeds, safer streets, safer cities, and then they see that a reduction of 5 kilometres an hour will reduce casualty crashes by 25%. That's true, but it's also very misleading. It's not giving them the information that they require to make an informed decision. So once again, I said before, I'm happy to support it. Now, I don't have a problem with it, providing it's done in the right manner. And I believe that the council should be making all of their decisions in this sort of matter based on facts and statistics and not emotion. And it appears that, as I said before, the survey has been written to achieve a yes answer. And you can ask 10 people the same question in a different way and get 10 different answers just by the way you ask that question. And that's my problem, is that the question has been asked in such a way that I think is deceptive.
Any further questions from elected members? No, there being none. Thank you, Mr. Lamprey, for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us. So feel free to rejoin the gallery. And that item's coming up very soon on our agenda, so you'll be able to listen to debates there. Questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice?
Yes.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, can I ask one? Just in relation to the public question that we just heard the answer to, can I ask, the answer stated that the overall net difference in depot fuel costs since relocating to Campbelltown shows an 11% increase in fuel costs and a 15% increase in the quantity of fuel consumed. Could someone just explain that to me?
The discrepancy or the...
Well, I just don't understand the difference between fuel costs and quantity. So I'm trying to work out what is usage and what is
through you to the director. Through you, yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, for all intents and purposes, it's the second figure, the 15% increase in fuel usage or fuel consumed. The first amount was just a dollar amount. So essentially, if you want to know how much increase in fuel, it's a 15%.
Thank you. Yep. No. So I presume then the 11% is just around price differentials in the same period in the 2 years rather than the usage. I'm taking that as that. The second question is, we were told, I believe, that the fuel usage wouldn't increase, if my memory serves me correct, but someone who was around the table at the time might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a no net increase. Can someone confirm if that's what we were told when we made that decision?
I don't recall it being put like that, from my recollection.
My recollection may be incorrect, that's why I just want to check.
I can put that to the CEO.
I wasn't here at the time.
No.
One assumes that since the depot's a good 40 minutes or what, because I've driven there and I went to a toolbox meeting, it seems to take a while to get there, that we would offset the fuel savings with the savings of having our own depot. So one assumes that at the time, council would have looked at, there would have been a little bit more fuel usage because we're using a depot that's some way away. But of course, the cost of setting up our own depot would have been, proportionately much, much larger than some fuel costs. So it doesn't surprise me that there is an increase in fuel because we are sharing a depot that's some way away, but the savings I would have thought I assume that's the reason why we're sharing with Campbelltown, Walkerville, ourselves, because of those shared savings.
And my recollection was, just to round it out, was that there were also efficiencies in us being relocated in a bigger depot that had their own sign shop and they had ability to maintain vehicles and more experienced crew for our crew to mix with and to use some of their skills. So and some of their equipment. So those things, some of those are tangible, some of them are intangible. But my recollection is that we knew that it was 21 minutes away was what we were told. I think something like that. I know which way you went, and that there would be an additional time, but that the workers were going to start in the morning, come here and drive back once, not for breaks and not for missing bolts. And I haven't heard whether that's being managed well, but that was my recollection of the text. Further questions of that notice, Councillor Barnett?
Well, I don't know how to phrase this question now.
Then
Perhaps somebody can agree with me that the recollection was that we did look at it in the totality of all the things you've talked about, not just one factor like the fuel costs.
Yes, and I do agree with you. Thank you for that question. Yeah. Any further questions of that notice? None that being the case, thank you. We'll finish that section and go to reports for decision. The very first of those, 10.1, is the community consultation results, 40 km/h citywide speed limit. The recommendation is on page 3. Does anybody wish to move it in its current form?
Accepting that.
I think, Councillor Harris.
I was maybe hoping to second it if that's possible.
Oh, okay. Councillor Harris, you happy to speak to it?
Yes, but you said as it is, but there's a two-part in one section, I believe. Option 1 or 2. Recommendation on page 3.
Looking at it, yeah. Where's the option?
Yep, good. Let's hope I wasn't looking at another one.
No, I think they're in the body of the report that we're talking about.
Yeah, whether we say yes or no. I thought there was an option that said that. What do you say?
No, the way it's recommended is to move to 40 citywide, except for main roads.
No options in there.
Hallway.
Well, I'll still do it as such, but I thought there was a two-choice option that either we did or we didn't. Okay, look, I'd like to move it, but I do want to take a couple of things on board, and one, I might get someone to correct something for me, because when I'm counting people, I'm an expert counter, and it's good to get people exactly the same. So I'm an owner-occupier on page 9, and 129 of us voted yes, 793 no, 27 were no responses, and 33 were unsure. But if I look down the bottom at unsure, 129 people were unsure, 793 were sure, 27, which seems to be exactly the same as the second column. Is there a reason? Is that a mistake?
I'll put the question to the director.
On page 9,
The table.
Through the chair, yes, it does appear to be a bad cut and paste. I apologise for that. I don't have the correct figures with me at the moment.
that's actually a mirror of the top one.
Yes, so I do apologise about that.
So I'm assuming it's the top one.
Guys.
Okay then. Well, look, sticking with that on the, not the assumption, the fact that's the top one. But the other thing I did want to quickly mention while we go into it, the actual survey did have problems. It did have problems of the 2 envelopes and the people, that the way it came out and things like that, that was confusing. While some of those things I agree with the previous speaker that said about pointing out. But if we as a council, and I mean our staff that put this thing together and the questions and that, if you go and you look at something, and particularly in this case, and it says by going 5 kilometres slower, it's safer, well, it's a bit pointless to put by going 5% faster, it's unsafer, because the ultimate thing of the whole question is to create a safe sort of situation. So I feel comfortable with it. But I had a lot of people talk to me over that, not just this bit article here, but over this period of time about this question. And the main opposition people that I had, there was people that were just blatantly against it, that weren't even doing 50. They had no qualms of saying, I'll do whatever speed I want. So those sort of people, unfortunately, yabbies, we might not be able to change their opinion no matter what we do. But for sensible people, it becomes a reality of going slower is safer. And it's safer for families and people on the street. It's also safer for our ears with our fumes and our lungs and all that sort of stuff, with the amount of fuel we use. And these humps that we got some good humps in the city, but we got some pretty bad ones that can knock your fuel around and things like that. So there's other causes in there that cause this. So the only people that I really took a lot of notice of, people that said to me point blank, look, I don't think we should have 40. I don't even do 40. It's safe to go under that, so I don't do it, but I'm going to oppose it. Well, to me, that's a waste of, if you're going to be under it anyway, why not do it for the other people around? So another thing I know, and I'm lucky enough to be old enough occasionally, that when Unley first brought theirs in, the increase in, I'd read the things in here about Unley and other councils and that, there was actually an increase on the main roads of traffic, not in the side streets, on the main road, because the people weren't cutting through them. So they went down Unley Road, Fullerton Road, Greenhill Road, Crossroads and that sort of stuff. So
1 minute if you need it.
Okay, so the people that we're looking after, our residents, and then there's the opposition of people cutting through. People will start to not cut through, and I don't mean a big lot, but they'll stop not cutting through, because why are we going to cut through somewhere where we're going to have to go slower? I'm cutting through to get somewhere quicker, so why I'm going to cut through to go slower? So there's those people, ourselves, and I live opposite a school, as most of you know, and to be able to bring those speeds down is a very, very good thing for the residents and businesses of Prospect. So I urge people to actually support this, and if I need to say anything afterwards I will, but please support it.
Thank you. And seconders,
I can.
Wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Not surprisingly, I'd like to speak to it. So this is something that's been on my radar for some time, and I'm really pleased it's got to the point where we're having a good discussion about tonight and hopefully making a decision one way or the other. We have been talking about this for 4 years, as far as my notes go back, in terms of how we manage speed and traffic in all of our streets. And a common theme that residents speak to me about often is around speed. And I think Councillor Harris is right in that we're not going to be able to deal with all people who speed in our side streets with this motion or with this action. But I'm really hopeful that we can deal with some of the speeding issues that we do have. Speed limits aren't the only answer to this, of course, and we have been talking about other ways of managing traffic, and I think this forms part of that overall response, but I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. I'm encouraged by the survey results, and I just thank the Deputy again for coming and speaking. I think he's correct in some of what he was saying. But for me, and this is very anecdotal, but people that have spoken to me about this over the last little while kind of mirrors the survey results largely. Slightly more in favour, keen to make sure we reduce speed and reduce volume on our streets, and this might go some way of doing that. The other thing I found interesting is the survey results in both the initial survey we did, a bit of a tester, plus the fuller survey, the results are fairly similar, and so that encourages me that we're kind of getting the right answer, notwithstanding the comments made by the Deputy. The other thing I found interesting was in the respondents who said no, there was a couple of issues there that I thought with some conversation with those respondents they might change their mind. So first of all, a revenue raising exercise, well, we don't raise revenue through this process. We don't raise any revenue whatsoever. So if someone had chosen no on the basis that they thought were just revenue raising, they might have said yes if they realised that that wasn't the case. The need to police existing speed limits, who will police? Well, policing a speed limit of 40 is no different to policing a speed limit of 50 or 60 or 80 or 100. It's clearly a SAPOL responsibility. They'll choose where they want to do that based on their own intel, and so the policing is the same irrespective of the speed limit. A focus on more appropriately designed streets rather than speed limits. We are blessed or otherwise of a city which is based on a grid, so we're not a greenfield site. We can't suddenly make more roads or cul-de-sacs or dead-end roads, although we might, in a simple way. So that is limited in terms of how we can design streets differently to what we've got, unless we decide to buy up large swathes of houses and knock them down and reroute a road, and that's not ever going to happen. And the last comment that I thought was interesting was we'll create confusion on what speed restrictions are and where they are. And I think this actually goes quite the opposite to say we are a city that has 40 km/h zone across the city. So I think it won't create confusion, or actually decrease confusion that we have at the moment, and we hear some of that. There's also, I think, a key safety angle to this motion around reducing speed. The World Health Organisation has stated that if a car is travelling 50 km/h, it will take 13 metres to stop. If a car is travelling 40 km/h, it will take 8.5 metres to stop. So both speed limits are great if you're 14 kilometres away from a braking car, presuming they see you, of course, but I'd rather take my chances with a car travelling at 40 km/h and give myself that extra 4.5 metres of safety. So the World Health Organisation has stated very clearly in their research that a car will stop quicker with a slower speed limit, and I think for me that's the really important part of this motion. As I said, though, this is only part of the solution to our traffic issues in the City of Prospect. For many years we've considered our precinct by precinct approach. I'm still of the view that we need to treat traffic management very differently to what we have in the past. You've heard me say this a couple of times over the last 3 or 4 years. We need to look at how we use our main streets. We need to look at the impact of making changes to traffic calming just on one street and what that impact is on other streets. We need to maintain our view on east-west connectivity, and consider whether or not this is via a one street or many streets. So we need to make sure people can still move, but we don't want to funnel all the traffic down one street. And we also need to be aware of the impact of development on traffic, particularly local traffic. I'm looking forward to for us eventually getting around to considering those aspects of my motion that I put up in November 2017, because I think they're still valid and we need to get to them, and we need to understand how we're going to manage traffic going forward. I just have one very brief question, and that is, in the August 2018 paper on this matter, there was a comment in there that we may need to seek support from the local state member of parliament. I noticed that this report doesn't make that comment. I'm not sure whether that was a must do or a nice to do. Can someone provide some advice on that, please?
get the advice. Sorry, your 5 minutes is up, so hopefully you don't have anything in response to that answer that comes up. Director?
Through the chair, it's a nice tool to have. We haven't included it as part of the recommendation. If member felt that was appropriate, they could have that as a variation to the recommendation.
Thank you. So it's not required for the minister's process. Okay, thank you.
Happy with that. Support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any further speakers to the motion? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I think Councillor Harris was looking for the options, and that's on page, yes, where there was the option 1 to introduce the 40Ks, or option 2 to maintain the current 50Ks. So moving on from that, yes, I've been 28 odd years on council, particularly in the western side of the city where we already have 40Ks, but again it was a very similar results in some respects to the fors and the againsts as what we're being on the west side twice. I think in fact we tried on the western side and eventually it sort of got up. So it's not like we have an overwhelming mandate, but then I think the nature of these things is that if it doesn't really affect me, I perhaps being like some of us, had the boonies going past and the near misses and whatever. So I think it would be good. We're looking to have a safer city to move around in. I think this would quite well go towards that. If we can get things that are safer, pedestrians and cyclists, and to have more of a connected city is one of our big aims. Again, and perhaps removes the confusion. If you come from the west and then you come across and you travel up Prospect Road, which is 40 k's, you go a bit further and 60 k's, then go up Market Track, sorry Milner Street people, but I have a track, up Milner Street, 50 k's, and then onto Maynooth Road, 60 k's. So I think that's one of the more frustrating things, and particularly if somebody's comes from somewhere else outside the city, perhaps wondering. But at any rate, so I would like to see it that it's viewed in the light that all the research says that it is safer. We can't legislate against idiots and hoons. But what can we do for the rest of the people that live in our city, that work in our city, that recreate or come to enjoy our city? I think it's been outstanding success having the 40 k's zone in our Prospect shopping centre, which was, I think, the first of its kind. It was Dipty, I think, came to us and we readily came to yes or something like that. But at any rate, I think that's proved successful as well. So I'm happy to move forward as in the motions, and I think it's the way forward now. And I do thank our deputy who pointed out, I only take some comfort in knowing that the other questions that we've had on this on the western side of the city produced a similar result. So that's about all I can sort of say there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp.
Yeah, look, just briefly, I'm happy to support the recommendations. I want to also take the opportunity to thank the fellow councillors for the opportunity and support to push the survey out to give residents across the city a chance to have their say. I spoke with a number of residents who actually did mention to me that they were happy that council was actually consulting with them on a wide approach and actually giving them the opportunity to have their say. I had that feedback on both sides of the spectrum, regardless whether people were voting for or against it. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Although I did have some feedback that residents were disappointed and issues with the survey, and confusion around the one vote per per household with multiple surveys being received, but we already know that, so that was a bit of an issue. But I'm glad to see that I did check with Simon that this figure, if a household was verbally advised, so please correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, but the actual final result includes eliminations where households, if they voted twice, that they're only getting the one vote's only considered in this. So I'm comfortable where that's at. So I think on big decisions in the future, it gives us the opportunity to actually look at surveying our residents again on other big topics as well. Doesn't always have to be as a standalone. We could look at, if we've got some big decisions coming up, putting surveys like this in with our council rate notices if possible. There's other ways that we can do it. But I think it's important that residents feel they've had their voices being heard, have had the opportunity to have their say, and happy to support it as a result of that survey.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Pearce.
Yep. I guess I agree with all the speakers that have spoken. The statistics show that, as the Deputy said, safer speeds, it's safer and all that. A couple of points I want to make. Those I did notice those tables 2 and 4 are wrong, but I presume the statistics still don't reflect those cut and pastes. Having said that, though, I mean, out of the number of surveys sent out, we got a 15% reply, so it's a very small number.
That's all right.
And of that, 52% of the yes vote, and obviously 48 or thereabouts for the no vote. So it's not really comprehensive enough, I don't believe, to warrant a change. As the Deputy said, there's a lack of evidence for serious accident prospects. So I don't think we've got a real problem here. And we're doing something to fix something we haven't got a problem with. A couple of things also on page 8. The yes voters, one of their comments was a reduced confusion on what speed restrictions were. In the no people, they also say we'll create confusion. So I'm confused. The big ticket item is it's a cost of $35,000 in our budget in next year, which, as we know with last year's budget and previous budgets, every dollar counts. And I just think that we haven't got a problem at the moment. We're spending $35,000 on, sure, the lower speed limit. All the stats are there. Well, we could make it 30 if we want. But I just don't think by spending that amount of money, we're really achieving much. And so I'd be against it. The actual the law is it's 50 kilometres an hour unless otherwise stated. So if and the question I've got actually is, can we revert to what is 40 at the moment back to 50 as well if this got beaten?
The question, Director.
The reason, sorry, Simon. The reason being, I'm really in favour of uniformity and less confusion. So if this didn't get up, I'd like what we have got as a 40 back to 50 as well. So it is 50 generally, except for those main roads.
We'll take the question as a procedural question.
Yes.
Could we change it, Director?
Through the chair, I'd suggest that council administration should make another report. If that was the wish of council, to look at the issues, advantages, disadvantages of changing an area which has been 20 years, 40, changing it back to 50. I don't think it's necessarily something that council should make a decision on tonight.
The question was, is there any lawful reason that we couldn't change it or ask for it to be changed back to 50?
No. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Anything further, Councillor?
No, that's very.
Okay. Further speakers? Councillor Wayne.
I support anything for safer streets, safer community. Looking at it from pedestrian and cyclist perspective, if we reduce the speed, we can reduce those accidents. If this does go through tonight, I do want to see council administration, when working with the Motor Accident Commission and DIPD and the Centre for Automotive Safety Research, when you're producing educational resources and campaigns, maybe consider other languages as well, just to cater for residents where English is not their first language. So that's my point.
you. That's a brief question, given you've already spoken.
No, just a brief question. Just following up on one of the previous speakers, just question how many households we have, and if the 2,677 respondents or household respondents, what percentage is that of our total households?
Director, in terms of the percentage of responses.
Chair, we didn't provide a percentage in the report because it went out to businesses as well. So it wasn't. So it went out to approximately 17,000 households and businesses. So we didn't provide a response rate because of that. It's not just a simple.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, some premises have multiple businesses.
Yeah, that's the trick. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Just briefly from the chair, I'd say I don't think there'll be a split vote, but if it was, I'd be voting in favour. And I have to note that this issue has come to us in various guises across the number of years I've been involved in council and before. And not in the sense of citywide, but certainly the issue of areas being 40 kilometres an hour. And the results of the surveying have been remarkably consistent no matter how the question is asked. And I do want to acknowledge the Deputy's submission that we could have asked it in a better way. It's always difficult to know how you ask these questions in a better way, I have to say, particularly when someone says, you need a school crossing outside the school. If you don't, the next child that gets killed will be on your head. You think, well, that might be a bit of an emotive way to load that question, but we have had those discussions here over the years, and they're quite an unfortunate way to consider a road safety issue. But every time we've asked this question over the last 20 years, I think, Councillor Barnett and Harris may be able to correct me, the answer has always been in favour of 40, and it's always been around the 55, 57% when we've done that. And that's been east of Maynooth Road twice in that time, and this one more recently in 2 ways. So now we've had 5 surveys all up, and they've been a majority in favour, including the original 40 zone that we're sitting in right now. So it seems to me that we've had this issue alive and well. We've had plenty of opportunity for people to say they don't like it. In fact, every household, every business, in fact, more than we've ever sent out before by the sound of it, have ample opportunity to know about it and to contact us and me as your mayor about this issue. I think I've had 2 emails about this issue, both in favour of the change. And I find that an incredibly remarkable response to something which is citywide, quite controversial in a way. I would have thought I'd be inundated with good people telling me what their opinions were, and I have to say I have not been. And I compare that to when we chose to do major interventions east of Maynooth Road, including closing, I think, 5 streets out of the many streets that were there and putting in humps and bumps elsewhere. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses, people packing the galleries and tickling us with placards on not very soft sticks and those sort of things. People were absolutely up in arms about being restricted from where they were driving. This certainly restricts the speed, but it hasn't been met with anywhere near that sort of response. And I also recall when we ask residents what they want to happen in their street and they're grumpy with what's happening in terms of speed and volumes, we often give people 10 options, one of which is speed humps. It's always voted down number 6 or 10 or so. Everyone hates speed humps. But they always put towards the top of the list, can you please change the speed limit? And we've always felt like, we're not able to do that right now. And there were previously different rules around that. Now there aren't. Now it's easier. I think it's time to get on with the job, because whenever we've asked people the question, that's the logical place that most concerned people get to. I'm also cognizant of a conversation I had with Dr. John Crozier only in recent weeks, who is a co-author of the National Road Safety Audit with Professor Jeremy Woolley, who's of the one of the universities here in South Australia. Preeminent people, fantastic report. He's very concerned about speed limits in terms of impacts. He's a surgeon. So he's very worried about the impact of vehicles on pedestrians and cyclists, the vulnerable people on our roads. In a car, you've got a bit better protection. He says there's a massive difference between 50 and 40, and it is better at 30. He'd like it to be 30 in heavily pedestrianised areas. And I know City of Adelaide have just asked for Hindley Street to be taken down to 30. He would agree totally with that. I've questioned him about 30 or 40. He says, look, there is a difference. It's safer at 30. You can survive almost anything at 30. At 40, almost everybody survives. It's a marginal improvement, but at 50, you've got a lot of people getting very, very hurt and need major surgery. So his view was, please consider this, and he'd like it considered across the country, not just in our city. His call was about the nation, not about the city of Prospect. I really like Councillor Harris's point that I hadn't thought of this before, but people who are trying to cut through and save time may be disinclined to do so if they sense they're going to have to slow down, and maybe they'll just stick to the main roads. I certainly hope that's the case. One of our issues and one of our expenses over the years has been traffic calming devices like humps and roundabouts and chicanes and all sorts. They cost us a lot of money, and I don't think they're that successful, to be frank. They annoy people. No one wants them outside their house. And this would be a far more cost-effective and uniform response right across the city. So I think it's a sensible thing to do. I'm grateful to the staff for going to so much trouble. You couldn't be accused of under-consulting on this one, Director. So I think that's been a pretty thorough result. So they're my comments from the Chair, and we'll see how it goes when I come time to take a vote. Is there any further debate from elected members? And that being the case, Councillor Harris, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of things, particularly where you brought the last one and was raised by a speaker about the difference, and responses were 52.9, 53% said yes and 43% no, and the other ones were unsure. Taken on some of the things that was said about people, various ideas about changing from one speed to another speed and then back to another speed. The one we went through the exercise, I didn't know was 20 years, but I knew it was a long time ago that we went. The way that was set up, we had to do it by blocks. So you got to a particular block that said no, then it mucked up a whole area. That's why we couldn't do it in one lot, where this was a lot better. This will never change how people are going to drive and what they're going to do. They're going to hit you with a car and it's going to be at 50, 60, 40, 20 or 30. That's what they're going to do. What we're doing with this, we're giving people an environment where those vehicles that are exactly the same, people are going to drive them slower. So I want to really take and finish with that last point David said from the doctor or the surgeon bloke, is the same person's going to hit you at 50 as they're going to hit at 40. We don't have those big accidents, touch wood, but if we did, they're going to now be at 40 and not 50, so you're going to have a better chance. So I ask people to endorse this, and I know in another couple of years people will just accept it and it'll be part of our life, and our streets will be a lot safer and a lot healthier. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Thank you. Good report, good debate. Thank you very much to the Deputy for coming in to talk to us. And if you're interested in the rest of the business of council, you're more than welcome to stay. But if you're not, you feel free to head home or whatever else you want to do. Thank you very much for coming in. Item 10.2, the Gawler Electrification Program impacts to vegetation along Devonport Terrace. Recommendations on pages 20 and 21. We have, since the report has been presented and published, met with DIPTI and Lend-Lease representatives on site, and their staff have recommended, as a result of that conversation, a couple of additional items in the motion. I'll just point those out to you in yellow up on the screen. And I'll ask someone if they're happy to, once you've read those, if you're happy to move those as per on the screen. Councillor Barnett?
Yes, so this is moving the entire motion, the recommended motion.
Thank you.
Yes, so I guess just to recap, when we first had this come to us at a council workshop, I think it was we were in shock, I think, shock, horror and whatever. And consequently then it's moved along, and I'm very pleased. I say thank you to our council staff, and I believe the Mayor for being, and also our residents down there, not just in that particular area but others across the city, who were absolutely shocked to think that it might be almost denuded basically. So we've moved on from there to reach this point, and I'm very pleased that we have, even though we will lose some of the trees or vegetation. I think some of the residents down there, apart from the ones who don't want anything touched, but there are some that are very shrubby, very, not very shady, and that type of vegetation doesn't provide much of a sound barrier. So I think this is a big step forward into working towards our plans for Devonport Terrace. So I commend the motions to you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do we have a further speaker? Sorry, second would be good. Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
Again, just briefly, just to thank the area councillors, Deputy Mayor and the Mayor. So I think it was a terrible proposal that came to us, and particularly the grant that we can use for beautification purposes. I think it's a better outcome. It's probably still not the best outcome, because I think the whole area needs to be master planned effectively. But I encourage others to support the motion.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Harris.
Could I ask whoever's got their finger on the pulse to go up a bit? Yeah. I have a question. Well, young lady's got a finger on the pulse. My question first is, in that 5, we'll install panel fencing instead of chain mesh. Well, I have no problem with chain mesh knowing. And panel fencing, is that a solid panel or is it bars or?
A palisade, like a car yard fence.
Yeah, okay. So it's still all see-through and all that type of stuff. Okay, look, I reluctantly support it in respect of, we have trees and just lately some of our hearts are broken. You drive down nearly every road, whether it be South Road, this road, Tea Tree Gully, Granger, and they're knocking down old, big, magnificent trees, small ones in front of the hospital. And I feel disappointed that once we used to scream about these things, and these things are happening every day around us. So I'm very sad when we lose a tree. I was very pleased the advancement we got from when we were first in this thing, when that bloke, for want of a better word, stood in front of us and said, well, they're all going and that's the end of the story and you got nothing. Well, we like the CEO's head. It'd be smooth as the day he was born. But now we've at least got something. I'm still disappointed that it's not so much everything, particular big ones, but I hope maybe the last couple of speakers might say we could perhaps go for a bit more, the 283 as opposed to $211,000 to sort of add for more. But at the moment, I think it's possibly the best we can get unless we can really stop the whole lot. So I support it reluctantly.
Thank you. Further speakers? Just briefly to add some insights from the chair, this has been a bit of a cause for a few of us, given we wanted to beautify Devonport Terrace and we found out that it was going to be death and desolation. So we've been working pretty hard on it. I'm grateful to the CEO of DIPTI and the head of Planning SA in recognising our angst and wanting to get a better answer. So they've been working hard at a better process, which they intend to use on all such corridors, not just ours. So, we have led to a better process in terms of designing these improvements. And one of the major things that's been done is to move the return cable from the outside of the gantries to the rail side of the gantries. And you might remember from the explanations that were given to us, there had to be a 3 metre no vegetation zone at all. Now that corridor now is pretty narrow, so that cable on the outside of the gantries meant that it was Armageddon except for grass that should be mown occasionally. And the department have worked out how to move that cable to the other side of the track, which takes away that whole issue. The next nearest wire is in the centre of the track above the train. Now that simple thing has saved an awful lot of vegetation. I don't think it'll save everything, unfortunately. I wish it did. but that's a great redesign, and I'm sure that our protestations have led to that redesign, which will also be used in other places where there's heavy vegetation. So I think we've achieved something not just for us, but beyond the city. The one thing that isn't clear is exactly what trees will go where, or what trees will be saved. And in a way, that's a deficiency that has dividends, in the sense that if we ask for a hard and fast rule, we'd probably get the worst outcome in terms of marking up what would go, and maybe they just give a chainsaw specialist a job and just go and cut them all down, tomorrow to get it done. Instead of a defined outcome, what we have is a process. And the process is one where our arborist will be able to walk along with their arborist, our manager with their manager, and say, let's talk about this one, and the next one, and the next one, and piece by piece they'll work out a plan of action for each and every tree or shrub along that pathway there. And notwithstanding that some of them has to be replanted, notwithstanding that some of them will have to go because they simply won't provide the clearances required, but that'll be a case-by-case approach, and I think that's going to be a much better outcome to us than asking for a definitive plan at this point, which is what we got originally. So the motion does recognise that, and the extra parts just provide some extra protections to that. In terms of the volume of compensation that's provided, look, you read the report. We could have put a much higher figure on it. In fact, I think we did. And the department have used other measures. This measuring the impacts of loss of vegetation is still a fairly new field, and our work in this space in the planning sense is established, but it's not well established as a method. And so there's still some conjecture around whether that's the right amount or that's the right compensation for loss. What's undeniable is that our vegetation on our nature strip down there is no botanic gardens. It is what it is. It's okay. It's green. It's fluffy. It screens the trains. But you wouldn't be putting specimen tickets down there and saying, look at these prime examples of foliage. So we know we've got an issue, and I think the recommendation is that we shoulder our share of that issue in terms of re-landscaping that street, and I find that difficult to argue with. So I'm recommending that you support what's in there, and we use that to best effect along Devonport Terrace and give them the upgrade that we promised a couple of years ago, and do that in conjunction with the project, using its best endeavours to retain vegetation, even to the point of changing the fence if that means a few less shrubs are lost along the process. So thank you to the staff and CEO for getting us to this position, and hopefully it gets support and we can move on. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett, to sum up if you wish.
No, I think most of the relevant things have been said, but and it is important that we will be going from $14,000 odd to 211, say $212,000. We could certainly do a whole lot more and work towards our plan for uplifting that area and again increasing our greening, even though we'll be losing some. But notice now we have got a lot of trees all planted down, new trees planted down on the eastern side. So slowly but surely get there. Again, I think all said and done, we've moved from a horrible place to a less horrible place.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against it is carried unanimously. Thank you. And those members of the gallery that are here for that item, you're more than welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting, but if you have to shoot off for something more pressing, we understand. Thank you very much. Item 10.3, Local Government Association 2020 Ordinary General Meeting, Notice of Motion, recommendation on page 32. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, just trying to get there. I'll stay in my seat. Right. Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm just skipped right through. I think it's the one that I'm...
Page 32, yes it is. Yes, about development fees.
Yes. Yes, I just think anything that we can do to help chip away at this, well, I've been chipping away for many years. So I just ask that we get this supported and get it, hopefully we can get it chipped away again.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
I just concur with what my fellow councillors spoke about. Yeah, so I think it's cost shifting, and I think we need to reclaim some of that to do our job effectively. And this is actually dealing with resident safety as well. I think it's really important that we do this job properly, and I think we need to send that message to the state government.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett, you see any need to sum up?
No.
Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is the review and update of existing policy. Recommendations on page 36. I have someone who wishes to move it in its current form.
Just a quick question for Ken first. Can we take the recommendations in parts?
I'm happy to take them in parts.
Something different to me. So. Or
I'm
just
happy to move it to get on the floor. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
I'm sure there'll be quite a bit of discussion around some aspects of this. From my perspective, taking it in parts, so to speak, I think that the results around public question time that we've achieved so far don't support keeping it on the agenda myself. And I like the rationale and the way that the staff have put together the various options for people to raise items of concern. But with regards to the rest of it, I'd be interested in hearing other elected members' thoughts and potentially recommendations for different motions, and then look forward to summing up at the end.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I just agree with Deputy Mayor Larwood. I think it was a great idea. I think Councillor Rip brought it in and it's on a trial and it sounded very good, but as the statistics show, a lot of the questions regard further input, so they were taken on notice, and that became a bit embarrassing. I think that it was almost a waste of time. Whereas on page 38, the other methods of finding out answers are much more practical. It's a pity. It was a good idea, but I just don't think it worked.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I don't have many problems with parts 1 and part 3, but I do have issues with part 2 because I think there are research what other councils do, both here and interstate, and there are other ways that you can improve. I think we could improve on public question time. Some others have that all questions must be received in writing on a form on the council website, state the name, address, the person submitting the question. So there's a little bit more, control over it in terms of the governance and perhaps the time that staff might take in referring to this. Some others limit it to 2 questions only. I just think, to me it's just the first part of a review, instead of just completely discontinuing it. I don't think it says very much to us that, we gave it a go, it didn't work, a bit less democratic approach, So I'd like to see it improved. And also, what else was there? Yes, I was going to move an amendment to part 2, and that is that council temporarily suspends public question time pending a review.
So get the words up on that.
continue and encourage people to submit their questions ahead of the meetings. I'm going to make this separate.
You've got a couple more minutes to speak to it by my timing. Just let the words go up there so you're happy with it, and we can ask people to read them while you're speaking to it.
We'll just wait
for the words, sorry, Councillor.
items. Public question time pending a review.
That is an alternate part 2. Part 2 says discontinue, so I presume you want the existing part 2 taken out.
Yes.
As a different part 2,
Yeah.
so just to be really clear.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You've got a couple of minutes if you need it.
No, well, I think I've said what I think. I think we should give democracy a little bit more of a chance and just have another look. And then after that, it comes back to us and we give that a bit of a go. And then nothing else happens after that. Yeah, I think you don't measure these things in terms of the wild numbers that have taken it up. I think, you know, if you just have one person that's been able to come here with public question time, a lot of people, you know, just aren't happy to come and do like more of a formal deputation. You know, I think it just gives us another option for people. So I'd like people to support my amendment.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I do. Look,
Sorry, my apologies. My normal process, I don't think this will be the case. My normal process is to ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate. I'll do that first. If not, I'll take you as seconder. Mover, Deputy Mayor, are you happy to incorporate that change within the motion?
I'm probably not allowed to say that I think we've already given it
Councillors no or yes?
a review. Oh, sorry. No.
Okay, thank you. So come back to the seconder, Councillor De Backer. Carry on.
Yeah, look, I'd like to second the amendment, primarily because it is about democracy. So if you're giving a deputation, it's sort of saying, I think this, whatever, and if you're giving a petition, it's for a certain cause. But this is an opportunity to ask a question. So it seems to be not so much that the actual intent is flawed, but maybe the management of the process needs to be improved. So I think sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, and I'd like to think we're a bit more grown up than that. I sort of think that we need to think about sort of how we can manage expectations on both ends. So, you know, often people are using, you know, maybe this forum, and certainly, you know, I've seen it happen. They've probably explored the other avenues before, which is why they're coming perhaps to a council meeting. And I think there has to be some sort of controls around the impact of staff resources. And again, that's the sort of CEO's call. So I think reviewing some of the protocols around it and the management of and setting the expectations of, but it gives the opportunity for the community to ask a question. And look, it hasn't even been promoted yet. I mean, I'd love to see some of our school groups coming in asking questions. And again, there might be limits around it, but it gives them an opportunity to come and pose a question and get an answer to it, as long as that expectation is discussed. So I'd look forward to a review, maybe over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And certainly, you know, this might form part of our strategic planning and being an open and inclusive and transparent government.
Thank you. Speakers to the amendment, are there any?
Just before I do speak, I'm not sure if I'll have the opportunity to speak again, but I just wanted to know if it's appropriate at this point that I do have a second amendment to propose. So I don't know whether that's appropriate to how the processes work.
We can do 2 amendments to the motion. If this one gets up, we can do another. If this one fails, we can do another.
Okay, so if I speak to the first amendment now, then I won't be able to speak if we'll move a second amendment after, is that right?
You will deem to have spoken to the amendment, but not to the substantive motion.
So I can move a separate one later if I speak now.
But
Okay.
he's got to bring it up at the same time.
Do I have to bring
No, because you're within an amendment. It's a separate list of speakers within an amendment.
Okay, all right. I think that sort of clarifies that.
Thank you for the question.
I did have the did I? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Look, I will be. I encourage people to, with respect to, I see the sentiment that the first amendment is proposing, and I thank them for that. I'm going to actually propose a separate amendment if this one doesn't get up, that states that council continue public question time and encourage residents to submit their questions to council meetings ahead of time. And the reason for that is I did read the blurb from the staff on their reasoning, and I find it a bit baffling with some of what's in here, that it says As estimated, 1/3 of the questions are carried forward to the next council meeting, effectively delaying access to required information. And then it goes on to talk about, we should be encouraging people to use the various alternative opportunities. Well, if that's the case, then we should probably be doing the same for our questions without notice, because we're asking questions without notice quite often here at our council meeting, and it's been a practice for years. To ask questions without notice. Again, that's request for information because we're acting on the behalf of residents or we're acting on the behalf of what we want to know. And we're doing exactly what public question time is doing. So I find it a bit contradictory that if we're saying, we shouldn't have public question time because of the fact that it doesn't allow for the service standard response of 15 days. Well, we could argue the same thing for our questions without notice on the agenda. So, and that's been on there for years and, works successfully most of the time. I think because it's only been in for a short time, I think we should actually continue it and always encourage residents to submit their questions ahead of time to meetings. And if some residents, I believe it states here, have sort of expressed, or there could be the perceived frustration that they're not getting answered straight away, well, let's continue it and let's ask that resident or the 11 people that have come, ask those 11 people that experience and say, well, we'd really love you to ask another question, but could you give it to us maybe with 3 days notice next time? Come and ask your question and give us a bit of notice, and then you'll get a more enhanced answer then and there at the meeting. So to totally discontinue it, I think it's pretty weak, to be honest with you. I think it says, we'll put something up, we might put up a couple of posts on social media and encourage people to come, and then we'll discontinue it altogether. I think that's a bit weak, actually. And I would like us to look to continue it, encourage residents to submit their questions ahead of time, and we might even look to potentially look at the regulations around that in the future. But I think this trial needs a bit longer, and I think it needs a good amount of promotion, particularly to schools and different groups by the staff. That's where I'm sitting. So I'd encourage people, if possible, to respect the intent of the amendment, not to support the amendment. And I'll put this one up after.
Thank you. Councillor Group, speaking to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'll try my best to do that. Look, I totally agree with what Councillor Barnett has put up, and I particularly like Councillor De Backer's idea around having school groups coming in. That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
I'm very, very supportive of this initiative that we're trialling. I'm not going to support the motion on the basis that I think if we allow it to be suspended, we'll kiss goodbye to the good part of 12 months before it comes back. I'm not in favour of that. I will be supporting Councillor Rip's motion when it comes up. There are 11 out of 16 questions were answered. That's 69% of questions that were answered on the night. That's probably better than the stats that we get when we ask questions without notice. So I think, I have no problems at all in people coming along saying, hey, I've just thought of this and I want to ask it. We have 30% of people who vote in local government elections. People don't see the relevance of local government a lot of the times. This is a great way to try and engage them in it, and I think 6 months isn't long enough. So on the amendment, I don't want to suspend it under any circumstance at this point. I won't support any suspension of it. So with respect, that's why I won't support it, but I will support any motion that might come up to continue it.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the amendment? That's been the case. There's no summing up on an amendment. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment? The amendment is lost. Okay, so now further speakers, and I recognise that a foreshadowed second amendment from Councillor Rip, so I'll go straight to you, Councillor.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to move an amendment that Council continue public question time. I'll let your keyboard catch up, mate. All right. Council continue public question time and encourage residents to submit their questions to the council ahead of council meetings. Look, I won't re-speak to it because I've already spoken to it, and I'll listen to obviously debate first, but I've said what I said obviously previously.
Thank you. We'll just go to the mover to see if you're happy to incorporate or not. Yes or no would be.
I'm going to say yes or no. I'd cheerily say no.
Thank you. I now need to second it. Councillor Groot, you happy to second it?
I am. I was anticipating that response somehow. Look, I will support it. Again, I won't restate what I said 3 minutes ago. The only point I would make, though, is that I don't necessarily think we have to encourage, we don't need to have residents submit the questions beforehand. I think if they can, that's great. It could be encouraged, but I presume that's what the intent of the motion is.
Correct.
I'll support the motion.
The amendment, thank you.
Sorry, the amendment.
Any further speakers to the amendment? Councillor Barnett and then...
Yes, and in this, I forgot to mention before in my research that, and I'm not sure if we can or can't do it, but I hope we can. Part of it was the delay, and then some people might say taking up so much of council time, having all the public questions answered at a council meeting and recorded, and so forth, so with. So I would like in the reviewing of this, and when reviewing the policy or the internal machinations of how we can improve this, to see where is there a way that why can't we just put it on council's website that these are the answers to the questions and write to the person or the group concerned. Why do we have to wait so jolly long and then take up so much of council's time perhaps in answering them and speaking to them? So that would be my hope.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask a question first of all? How have we promoted public question time in the past? Because it seems to be a perception that we haven't promoted it, and a general consensus, or maybe some people are saying we should promote it more, but I'd like to know how we've promoted it, first of all, to see whether it was actually inadequate. So through the chair, can you direct that?
Thank you. Who can answer that question? CEO, surely you could find someone to answer that.
Did somebody like to put up their hand? No. Just on that, I assume that we have done it through our website. Is that correct, Crystal or Nathan?
Through the chair, I can certainly recall a number of social media posts. They were in the initial months.
Yeah.
I don't recall many in recent times, but certainly social media posts on two channels. And obviously the details have been on the website, and the reference exists on every council agenda that's published. But no call flutes, no flyers or other types of promotion that we would use for other council activities.
Through the chair, we haven't done a concerted campaign on it, but we haven't been hiding it.
Very reassuring. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Well, sorry.
Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Earlier this morning. Was it a minute? We seem to be getting a bit confused. Some people want people to be able to come to a meeting and have their minute in the spotlight and ask a question. And other people want other people to be prepared and submit their questions beforehand. So I feel like we're in danger of what this is all about, is getting confused. And I also think that we need to be very clear in our minds what council meetings are actually about. Council meetings, from my perspective, are about decision-making and receiving and adopting reports by and large, and that's our role. Is it a free-for-all where we could have a lineup of dozens of people and school groups coming through and turn it into something which I don't actually think is what council meetings are about? I think there might be other opportunities to consider. Maybe we should say at a workshop once a month, first 15 to 20 minutes is invite people in to actually ask questions and see how things work. So I think this is getting confusing with what we're trying to achieve here. And that's why, I'd be happy to support something, but I just don't think we've got a clear picture of what we're supporting here and what we actually want to achieve out of this process. So if anyone can help ease my mind or untangle the situation and help us come up with a good outcome, then I'd be happy to support that. But at the moment, I can't support something which I really can't see where it's going.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Nguyen.
I think I will support the amendment. Wouldn't it be great for us to have a full gallery, people coming in different groups, people who have recently become citizens, asking questions, engaging with us, wanting to know about the council and what we do. And if that's ideal, that's great. But some of the mothers that I've spoken to say that this time is really hard for them. It just doesn't work for them. You've got to come home and, dinner, kids, school, shower, bath, all that. So it doesn't work for them unless they have a really urgent, really pressing issue that they want to come here and address. Giving them the option to write in their question in advance, it's allowing them to still be to engage with us, and I think that's the reason why I want to support this, because it's giving them another option to communicate with us.
Yeah.
So I don't want us to spend public question time, but I think if we run and trial with this, see how it goes, just giving them another option, I think that'll be good.
Thank you. Further speakers to the amendment? Councillor Pearce.
As I said before, I thought the idea was a great idea, but I don't mind that amendment other than encourages it. I think it should be that they have to submit their questions. For example, the question we had at the December meeting was impossible to answer. What is the ongoing net difference in depot fuel costs? Well, good luck answering that one off the bat. And then the person who asked the question is not even here to hear it on the night. So, a bit strange. I don't mind that amendment other than it should be not encouraged, but should be mandatory. Otherwise, we're just going to have people asking questions that cannot be answered, and next meeting you get the answer and perhaps they're not even here.
Thank you. Further speakers to the amendment? Councillor Harris, in the back.
Yes, look, I'm going to support it and again, possibly be lucky enough to have some better examples than we've just been picking up there. This council went through some times where we stopped the burning of rubbish in houses, in the bins. We went through the time where we lost, but tried to get rid of these wires up the top from Optus or wherever it was that came and scarred our city, and a few other things, changing the position on how many elected members we had, changing a thing about the bows and arrows up at Broadby, where we had large contingents of people sitting behind us. And 9 out of 10 of those times, someone tried to ask something, tried to say, and the chair, Christina at the time, and then before, and you, David, would be in the same boat, that would say, excuse me, you can't speak, you're in the audience, you can't ask a question, only us people here can ask. So this trial period we went through, there's a way of looking at it. We didn't have one of those issues that came up to create that. I believe we did. Edwin and Ratherglen came up with a thing that actually changed the motion we put, or the question that come up. And that come up by the person that did ask the question, although 3 of them came, that was reading our agenda on that weekend, like just before, not a couple of weeks before, that was a different proposal than we had, and that was the end result. So I support it, trying it, and maybe it's not going to work, and I do take on board what the Deputy Mayor, I think it was, said, or someone did anyway, that we could have 400 school children here trying to ask a question and go, and we'll all go home at 11 o'clock and come back every 3 nights. So I would say then it failed. But we've got to have that opportunity. There's things that come, and a couple of people that went home tonight, they bring up things that they see the agenda, and I'm assuming it's about Thursday, Friday, people see it, and then it might not be a time to answer and come, and it might be a simple answer. This thing about the petrol and stuff is a good example for opposite to what I'm saying, because Mr. Standon's not here, and I don't know the reason he's not, so I'm not going to comment on that. But the answer you gave him tonight, and I assume gets sent to him, the answer you gave him tonight is a bit of a shock to me, because I believe what someone else said earlier on, that I'm sure we got told things won't be different. So I'm going to support this. I support it as it's written rather than try and change it all, but it just says people should be encouraged to put it in, and we haven't put up there, which I hope staff are taking on board, that apart from this Facebook thing they talked about, social media stuff, that we maybe put it on our website or a sign out. So it doesn't have to be hundreds of signs all over the place, but just things, or on a race nose, if you've got a question, you can do that. So I hope people support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Yeah, just following on from what other speakers have said, I think it's really important that we do keep it, because this is a place for the public to get answers. And it's not the only place, and I do agree that there are other methods, And again, that's for the administration to help manage. You know, it may be that we, you know, have a fact sheet somewhere available in the gallery. If you've never been to a council meeting before, these are the things. It could be in the children's area downstairs. It could be in a community notice board if we still have one at the front. You know, so I think there's plenty of ways we can promote it, because in my, you know, 5 years here, it's the same people often giving the deputations and petitions because they know the ropes. We actually want to encourage more of our citizens to get engaged with council in whatever way they can. And this is just one way. And I think it's just around managing expectations, and also, you know, it does have to go through the CEO and the chair, so they're able to manage the meeting in that regard as well. I've got great confidence in that.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers to the amendment? I think everybody spoke to the amendment. Question, Deputy Mayor?
I do have a question, yeah. My question is, can I add an amendment to the amendment to the amendment?
No.
Anyone?
No, it's not just a special rule for you, Deputy Mayor. No, not the case. We'll leave it at no. Simplest way to do it.
Can I ask the mover of the amendment whether he would consider adding that we extend the trial for a further 6 months to his amendment, or a period of time?
Thanks for the question. No. And even if there were circumstances, certainly not at the end of everybody speaking, because no one's had the chance to consider that. So there's a few reasons why that's a no. But that concludes the debate. I'm not going to speak to this item, as plenty said. For the amendment, there is no summing up. So all those in favour of the amendment, which you can see up there on the screen, and all those against the amendment. The amendment is 1, and now becomes part of the motion.
And you've got to speak in favour. I've never said that.
Can I have an amendment now?
Can you move an amendment now? Yes, I believe so. Just double check. We're going to have one successful amendment. No, it's not about success.
No, it's a third.
3 total. Okay. Yep.
They'd have 3.
I didn't want to say no to you again, but I have to say no. I don't want to say it again. So don't ask me any tricky questions. So that now becomes the motion. We have spaces left if people still wish to speak to the motions. There's been plenty of discussion though, so I'm imagining that people don't. Councillor Barnett, you still wish to speak to the motion?
Recommendation part 3 I'm looking at.
And I'm sorry, you moved an amendment, so you deemed to have spoken to it already.
All right, so I can't ask a question.
That's a brief question.
My brief question is that is it possible for whoever's in charge of changing this from the staff point of view, that on page 46 is reimbursement expenses, and it particularly mentions 5.19.5 taxi Uber. So if Uber goes bust, you know, I think my question would be, can we just delete the words taxi/Uber and leave it as transfers from airport venue/venue?
I'll put the question in terms of it being specific. Like taxi doesn't say yellow or whatever. It's generic.
Through you, Mayor, we can remove the word Uber if that's the desire of council.
And make it
just transfer.
I think just transfers to and from airport would cover.
Transfers, okay.
You know, coach.
Uber.
Just transfer.
Having used members having used up our 2 amendments, I think we have to take that on the word of the staff that they will pick that up. It does say as provided at attachments 1 to 10. I might ask the mover if he'd indulge under part 3 with minor amendments in brackets. This is part 3. I'm hoping, despite me saying no several times, that the mover will say yes.
Director of Governance? I'm happy to accept that. I was going to raise that myself. I didn't think it was a big point, but if people are comfortable with removing that, then I'm happy with that, yeah.
Yep. I'll just seek the seconder's endorsement of that. To change the word taxis and Uber to transfers.
I wasn't the seconder.
Yes, you were, of the whole thing. Parts 1, 2 and 3.
It was Robin Pierce, it wasn't me.
Oh, sorry. What am I doing?
Not to the amendment.
No. I'm happy with that. Yes, it's quite right. Happy with that. Happy with that. Thank you. That's the leave of the meeting. All those in favour of that minor change. Yes, it's thus incorporated. Thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? Just check now. I've been caught out.
Haven't spoken to the motion.
No, that's correct. You are able to speak.
Look, I just want to make just a brief point. I'm just going to go back to the public.
Sorry, Manager Governor.
You were involved in the amendments.
Oh,
She draws me four and she does this.
my mistake. You are right. I thought I checked and I got that wrong. You were a seconder of the second.
Point of order. Councillor Ripp asked if he could speak to the motion if he moved amendment, and you said yes.
Yes, because he was speaking to an amendment.
So did I.
You seconded the amendment. So the mover and the second of the amendment are deemed to have been speakers to the substantive motion.
That's a shame.
But if you speak after the mover and seconder, you're still free to speak to the original motion.
What are you getting? Okay. I was going to answer Deputy Mayor's question about clarity of purpose, but he will have to go into the vote.
Without that clarity, yeah. So just to be clear, as far as I can see, I can still speak to the motion. Councillor Harris can still speak to the motion. Councillor Nguyen can still speak to the motion.
Yep.
That is it. Do either of you two wish to speak to the motion?
No, we'll just ask a question. Are we still putting it together in 3 parts?
I'll take it in parts. Yep. As I said, I would. The new part 2. Okay. There being no further debate, Deputy Mayor, do you wish to sum up?
I feel I should.
Don't have to.
Oh, I feel I should. Well, that was quite an enjoyable discussion, I must say. I think it was. I genuinely mean that it was good to hear the perspectives of the people around the table, and seeing that in particular part 2, there's a few people who feel very passionate about that. Then I'm not really going to stand in the way of something which they feel is a valuable addition to our meetings. I do feel that there's not a real lot of clarity around how we're going to promote this better and where we start and stop with regards to who we get to be involved and what place this actually plays as part of a council meeting overall. But in general, yeah, if we can put a little bit more effort into promoting it, I would have liked to have got a time frame in there to see whether the promotion is actually useful and works. We didn't get that in there, so I guess we've got this for the rest of our natural born lives. So I do look forward to...
I should have noticed, sorry, I was just thinking next meeting if you so saw fit. But anyway, carry on.
I look forward to all elected members channeling the contacts and connections they have and maybe being provided with some information which they can distribute. And I look forward to having to set up another television screen out there, maybe a big screen, and 30 or 40 more chairs there. And we might have to have a ticketing machine in the future because it'll be so popular that it'll have to be quick. I look forward to it being more successful than I think it has been in the past through the efforts of elected members and the staff in promoting it widely.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Sorry. We'll do that again.
Well, that wasn't in parts.
Part 1. All those in favour of part 1? Against? Is carried unanimously. Part 2. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. And part 3. All those for? Against? Is carried. Thank you. That debate reminded me of the question that school kids asked us at our recycling waste management presentation. It's a very simple question. Where does our recycling end up?
You would have asked that on the spot in a meeting, sure.
Aware of when you get asked of these things. I think we've got a much better answer now. Item 11, general business, urgent business. Is there any urgent business we need to consider? Sorry, just cross the section out, but I'll just uncross it. Councillor Harris.
Just briefly, that because we're now, the urgent business is I had raised before and we ended up pulling down the building and shifting, so time wasn't right to come back. But some of us, when we either in heart or in practice attended the violence against families and women and stuff, and I tried to get before, but we were just shifting our premises and moving out, that I'd like to see. So it's more a question to do something than put something that we seriously try and look at some way of setting something up, particularly now that we're just one total whole building, that if people do have domestic problems or do have various violence things out in the real world.
So, Councillor, so just jump in, this needs to be urgent business, something that has to be done now. There's a motion on notice process for things that have got plenty of time to...
Yeah. I will leave it then and move a motion.
Yeah.
Thank you for, trying to...
Yeah. The very first thing I have to do is ask the elected members to say that it is an urgent matter. And that gets tricky if it's not.
I hope no one gets beaten tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah. Right, but I look forward to seeing a motion on notice feel free to discuss that with the CEO and the staff about how to word that up. Yeah. There's no further matters or any matters of urgent business. We'll move on to item 12, reports and information. And we have item 12, do this by call over, otherwise they'll be moved on block. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.1, the Mirror monthly activity report? No. Item 12.2, the strategic plan 2020 information report. No. Item 12.3, the outstanding council resolution report.
Yes, I'd like to. John.
Thank you. Item 12.4, the Intelligent Community Forum Top 7 Communities of 2020 application. Anybody wish to withdraw that? No. Anybody wish to withdraw item 12.5, 16 years of the Community Support Fund? Councillor Nguyen. Item 12.6, anybody wish to withdraw the Prospect Growth Corridor 1% increase in rates revenue? No, great. I'm going to move therefore on block item 12.1, 12.2, 12.4 and 12.6. So I take that as the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Barnett. Was it down the end there? There is no debate. All those in favour? Against, they're carried unanimously. Thank you. Some great reports in there. Thank you to the staff for the information. Item 12.3, the outstanding council resolution report, withdrawn by Councillor Ripp. Just to start with a question, or are you happy to move it, and which means you can also have a question?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to move it. I'd actually have a question in terms of the outstanding resolution report, and thank you for that report and the update. But I'm disappointed that I came here to tonight's council meeting. Obviously, got the agenda Friday, but I was particularly disappointed that I've gone out to residents and telling them that on the petition for the traffic management at the Balfour Street, Howard Street intersection, that's going to be coming up to council. That should be coming up to council in January. And I'm disappointed to see that we have a motion here back in, let me get the time, 27th of August 2019, and I've sent this on to residents who asked me about it, that in item 3 it says, council prepare options for alternative traffic control devices, including cost estimates for council consideration by January 2020. I just want to know why this isn't coming up tonight to the meeting, because it's pretty disappointing. I'm going back to residents yet again on another item to say it's not here. At least we got notification that with the 40K decision that it was going, there was a delay, so I got back to some of the residents wanting to know about that. But I've got residents, a handful of residents, they're expecting this to be here tonight, and I'm disappointed it's not, to be honest with you.
Take the question. CEO,
Through the chair to the director.
Through the chair. Thanks for the question. All I can do is apologise. I have witnessed the outcomes of the consultants' report. Just wasn't able to come up, be presented to this council meeting. It'll be presented to the next council meeting.
Yeah, brief, so I can tell them that.
So I do apologise. Thank you.
No worries.
Councillor, are you happy to move it in its current form?
I'll move it in its current form, yeah.
To speak any further to the report?
Yes, I'd also like to ask another question if possible. We had a meeting on site with staff recently. It was Councillor Harris, myself and members of a couple of members of the Broadview Football Club obviously talking about the Oval and the issues that were raised, as well as 2 staff members from council. And the member from Broadview Oval told me that, to their knowledge at the time, and that was a couple of weeks ago, but in terms of our internal revision of the master plan and around that the club have not even heard from council at all yet about any meeting to review the master plan. Now, I'm not sure, because I'd be shocked if that was the case, but I've been asked by the football club, could I check, because they told me that they have, up to a couple of weeks ago, that they have not had any emails or communication on the meeting to review the master plan. And that, I'd be shocked if that was the case, because this was dealt with last year, quite a while ago. So can I just get some clarification on where that's sitting?
Yeah, sorry, Director.
Through the chair, I have been liaising with Shane. We haven't formally had those meetings with the key stakeholders. I signed the letters yesterday at home about the letters going out for invitations. Yes, it was meant to happen end of last year. Again, I'm sorry, we've been flat out. But I have been liaising with Shane, advising him that it is coming up, so he's aware that there is formal meetings coming up. I've signed the letters, and these meetings will occur over the next couple of weeks with all the key stakeholders of the Broadview sporting clubs.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, no worries. All right, well, yeah, that, can I just ask, sorry, if that's possible, quick further follow-up to the Director, what other stakeholders have been invited, if any, for those meetings?
Director?
Through the chair, we've got the football club, the cricket club, the bowling club, and the 2 tennis clubs.
Thank you.
Okay,
Councillor? Good.
Look, thank you for that update. Well, yeah, thank you. I'll leave it at that. And obviously there have been some members of the football club that weren't aware that you're having those discussions with Shane, but I'm disappointed that the meetings have been held quite late, but I'll let you. Just one question, when are we expecting to get that, the internal revision of the master plan done and back to council, and then I'll leave it at that?
April 20.
It is April. That's how I read it.
That chair with April at this stage, but I will provide a update or a memo that process from here.
Okay, thanks, mate.
Thank you. Well, second. Councillor Group, do you wish to speak to it?
I do wish to speak to it, if I may. So just interested, there are 16 outstanding council resolutions. Out of the 16, 13 are due in February or March this year. And my first question is, are all these coming back to council in February and or March? Because that makes for fairly detailed meetings for both those.
CEO? I think it depends on, start with the infrastructure resolutions.
Through the chair, just looking at the outstanding ones. There are quite a considerable amount coming back in February, March, not all of them, not all the outstanding ones, but yes.
Okay.
So there, can I just clarify, there are 13 coming back in February and
Sorry, CEO. Are they not all infrastructure ones? You're asking more?
Oh, no, I'm talking, there are 16 resolutions, outstanding resolutions. 13 of them have got dates of February or March.
CEO, so I guess it's a question to you to manage that. Is that your expectation?
Look, elected members, I think it is disappointing that we haven't turned around some of these resolutions. We're working now very closely. I'm working very closely with Simon's team and other directors to turn these around. I think it's very unfortunate that we've got what you call a log-jam resolutions. We will try and clear as many of those as possible. But at the same time, we want to make sure that you're properly informed and there's enough time, obviously, to debate them. All I can say is it's regrettable we've got this many that are coming across 2 months of council meetings. It isn't something that should have happened, and we'll be planning to make sure that those are more appropriately managed going forward.
Just my point being, I guess more than anything else, is that if it's going to take 3 or 4 months to unjam these, I'd rather us be told that up front rather than us expecting that they're all going to come in the next few months, and then at the end of the February March meeting we say, well, hang on, there's another 10 that haven't come to us. That's just a comment. The other one is the traffic management on Churchill Road has an expected completion date of December 19. I presume that was awaiting a response from DIPTI according to the list here. That I presume wasn't resolved at the end of December.
That's correct. Director, I understand we had a preliminary response, but we haven't seen a report come back.
Through the Chair, we're waiting for a more detailed response. Yes.
So I'm just thinking again that date is probably incorrect, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Reading from the start of the motion, relevance to core strategies policy, strategy 4.4, accountable and people-focused service, timely completion of council resolutions, assists in meeting legislation and good governance responsibilities and obligations. Can I ask the CEO how he plans to hold various team members accountable and what does accountability look like?
CEO?
Well, I think, Deputy Mayor, as I've mentioned, I will be holding them accountable, and what accountability looks like is that we will turn these resolutions around and make sure they're properly informed and delivered to council meetings. Clearly, we're running behind on that. But I've indicated to Simon I want to meet, most of them go into the infrastructure area, and I'm meeting with that team on a weekly basis going forward to review these to make sure that they're getting the priority and resources they need.
And what sort of commitment can we get that once we clear the logjam, that's right, isn't it, logjam, that we won't find ourselves in this situation again? Is there going to be some sort of internal policy formed around, I know some of the response times are mandated by the person who puts forward the motion, but I think the last thing that any of us want to see happen is a massive effort put into clearing the decks and then for it to happen again in 6 months' time or thereabouts, and us, standing here asking the same sort of questions. So you may not have an answer for that right now, but from my perspective, it would feel like we need to develop some sort of structural plan to ensure that we don't find ourselves in this situation again. I think we'd all be pretty comfortable with realistic timeframes being met rather than ambitious timeframes not being met.
There's a comment. Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Pearce.
Just item 1316 with the leasing, the two proposals for ground floor. Can we have some further information on that?
CEO?
The two proposals for the ground floor.
We can update you.
It's not confidential? No, it's not.
No, it's not confidential.
Okay, thank you.
We can be generic about the details.
Yeah. Through the chair, we have two proposals in for leasing the ground floors, 47 square metres, and I have actually just written the report, and I've got to get Chris Muvey to also view it because we wrote the report for the Nature Foundation, and then we'll provide the report to the Chief Executive Officer, and to make sure that it's within the original council resolution that we adopted mid-year, which was to get a combined rent from the two premises of $100,000. So I've got the report already done.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, anything further?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. Any further speakers this motion? Councillor De Backer?
It's a great report. It's a fantastic dashboard, I think, for councillors and the CEO to have. And I think taking Deputy Mayor's point of view, it just holds everyone accountable and including our own expectations. So I think that's a sort of hard conversation we're going to have in the next 6 months of what we want to achieve and how we're resourced and where we're meeting in the middle. So I think it's a great addition to the council report.
Thank you. The debate. I just want to contribute here that this is supposedly a report we get every 12 months. So you'll all remember the one we got 12 months ago, the one 12 months before that. 12 months, I don't. I asked several months ago for this list, and it took several months to get to me in a form which was accurate. And I found that incredibly disappointing. It was certainly in no way, shape or form to bring to council, given that it was riddled with not just things being late, but things that actually had been finished were still on the outstanding resolutions register, which smacked to me of there being a complete lack of process around a discipline to get through these items. These are our items. And I have to state really clearly, this is our chamber and we represent the people of this city as their representatives. I'm quite happy for the CEO and his team to go away and work on whatever they think they need to do to fulfil the ambitions of this council. But when I sensed that the team were not focused on our resolutions, I got quite disappointed. I'm very pleased to say that this is the shortest version of this I've seen for some time. And I can tell you the CEO has been working assiduously on getting these matters dealt with. And you've heard his disappointment. That's what I hear as well when I ask these questions. But I know that he's working with the team very hard to make sure that this is cleared and that things that are sitting on the register are there for a good reason, because sometimes the questions are not easily answered or our requests aren't easily satisfied. And where that's the case, we will all know that. But where it's fairly routine or it's a job to get on with and it's not being gotten on with, we have every right to raise the questions that have been raised tonight. And I thank the councillors that have raised those questions because they're quite pertinent. It is a great report to get at least once a year. And I've also asked the CEO to check on all the budget items which were approved, arm wrestled over or cut cake over last March and through to June to make sure that all of those are being actioned, because I know how disappointed you'll all be if they're not actioned by June 30, in fact completed by June 30. Preferably, given the money's got to be out the door by June 30, completed in May. So the invoices are in and the money's out. So there is a new CEO, there is hopefully a new process, and there's certainly a higher level of accountability, which I welcome, because it enables you to ask exactly those questions that I ask in between meetings on your behalf and at your request. So I'd like to thank the CEO for bringing it to us and wish him all the best in making sure that the logs are unpicked and float down the river or whatever your analogy turns into, and that February and March are incredibly busy meetings, Councillor Group, with resolutions required or reports certainly coming from what we've asked for. Any further debate on this item? If not,
can I just ask a brief question?
Yes.
Is it possible for this to come to us quarterly? Had I already spoken, I would have maybe moved an amendment.
CEO?
My aspiration, Councillor, is that we actually get this to the point where it can reside on the website.
Even better.
And in fact, not only will this reside on the website, we'll add a task list that is not resolution based. I think one of the things that I think are regrettable is that quite often councillors have felt that they've had to move resolutions to get things done. And we have a task list well beyond this resolution register. I think it's fair to say that the register isn't in a condition where we could put it up on the website at the moment. My strong desire is to get it to the point where we'd be proudly putting it up on our website so that not only could elected members refer to it, but the community can refer to it. And it will go well beyond resolutions. It will go to all of our task lists and we'll have them prioritised and we'll have a commentary around them so people know that they've been recognised. We have got, frankly, some work to do before we can put that up, but that is the plan, that it won't have to come quarterly. I think councillors, I'd like to think you could refer to the website and know exactly what's going on. And in fact, you know, this is a working, living document that shouldn't be referred to, you know, even quarterly or once a year. It should be a working, living document that's up there. It's amended regularly. We do need to do that. Oh, excuse me. But we publish monthly. Yeah. So whether it's monthly or whatever the requirement is, we'd like a regular update in a forum like the website. We don't need a special extranet for councillors because we're having to make it transparent. And I'm hoping that that will achieve not only a more transparent approach with elected members, but also with the community. Now, frankly, we're not there yet, but we will be in the weeks ahead, and my intention is to put it all up there. But we do need to get this logjam. Sorry about use of the metaphor, but it's there at the moment. We need to clear the logjam. We need to make sure we've got service level type timeframes that we apply and a discipline. And when we've got that, it'll give me confidence to put it up on the website, and I hope that'll be of assistance.
Thank you. Any further debate? There be none. Councillor Ripp, you wish to sum up. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. We have neither forest nor river, so logjams are not so many we see that. No, we do have a little creek though, so We had to build it ourselves. Item 12.5 is the next one withdrawn. 16 years of the community fund. And Councillor Nguyen, would you wish to ask a question or move it in its current form?
Both.
Both.
Question. The Vietnamese community in Australia received funding at the last council meeting. That's not on here. Is that right?
The question is, did they receive the funding?
My question is, should that be
In the report.
in the report?
Okay, thank you.
Through you to the director.
Through the chair, it is part of the events grants which haven't been going for 16 years. I'm just trying to check. Nothing else is jumping out at me from the events grants. So we've dealt with that separately, essentially, and it hasn't been captured as part of this $375,000. So the SAMASA and the Bangladesh Association and the others that have received the events grants in recent years are not captured by this report.
So that's another amount in another place.
Indeed.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor?
So should we combine it? Like, can you not include it in here as well, or it's in a separate?
Through the chair, we absolutely could. We wanted to just pull this together because it had been more than a decade since we've been operating this process as a council, and we really just wanted to share the news of where $375,000 has gone. The events grants have been running, I think this is the third year that we're in at the moment. We can absolutely combine them and update them in future years. We just wanted to spread the word on how this long-standing project had delivered across the community.
Thank you.
Look, it's great to see the distribution of funds going across, schools, you've got clubs, you've got kinder gyms, you've got different community groups here, and to table it, it makes it really easy to understand and, a quick glance you can see, wow, that's where the fund has gone. So I think it's great. So obviously they're applying for it. It's going to a worthy cause, and, it's something that they probably look forward to every year.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group, do you wish to speak to it?
Just to probably echo some of the comments. Great report. I just wonder if this is made public or whether this could be made public, because I know in my years gone past, sometimes we get the same, and you can see this, get the same applicants, and it'd be a great way to sort of show people, this is what people are doing with our money. It's great. Apply and get a bit more diversity in our applications. Whether it could be done maybe without the dollars or something. It's just a comment. Well, no, I ask as a question. Could it be made available?
No, it's public by virtue of the fact of being in this agenda, but you mean promoted more broadly?
Yeah, like on a website or something like that.
Yeah, look, thanks for the question and thanks for the part answer through you, Mayor. My view is essentially what we wanted to do was actually publicise this because it wasn't known that, for example, the North Adelaide Football Club had received $8,000 over the last 15 years. There are probably other ways we could promote it. Certainly this is public and live and released now. By all means, spread the word yourselves, and we can certainly look at options.
I didn't get a public question on it next month. Who knows? I just got a comment on is at the end of page 17, you've got a reference to Prefer, Prospect Residents Energy Forum, and then you've got the rest of Prefer on page attachment 19, I think it is, or 20 even. Anyway, you probably want to maybe put those together if you do make it more public. So they're just kind of listed separately for some reason.
Thank you. Take that advice.
Really good, thank you. And it kind of makes me think about recurrent funding with some of these groups that we seem to fund the same thing every year. That could be a good thing or might not be a good thing, I don't know. But some of them we really are just funding currently through a process, and that seems inefficient. Just a comment.
For reflection. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I think it was really pleasing, I think, to read all the good work. It's really a very good news story, I think, and one that's hidden, as under a bushel and all those other, sort of phrases. I think it would be good to somehow, capture this a bit more, on our social media, or, do you know that for, past 16 years, this has been spent in the community and on all these great things, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to tell and just a comment, that under where it's got the title on some of the grants there, Prefer. So it then changed its name to Prospect Local Environment Group. And so that's just the reason why, you might see.
Thank you. Councillor Beckett.
Yeah, look, it is a really good news story, and one of the things I'd really love to capture is not just the cost but the value, because often this is all provided with volunteer labour. So whereas we might have to provide a program, or we choose to provide a program through the council administration, you've got to factor in wages as well. So I think it's a great news story that people are doing things for the community by the community. And that sort of value figure of volunteer hours is actually a really key part of that as well. So just a comment for future value.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Just briefly, I'd like to build on that. It is, and in terms of promoting, I think Councillor Groot's point is a good one in terms of, hey, look, everybody, this is what's been happening. But it's down to dollars. It just looks like a shopping list of who's on the league table getting the most money. Whereas I think Councillor Becker's point's a really valid one. Like some of these I know have turned into landscaping outcomes which have beautified the city. The Miniature Railway Association, for instance, or Society, have spent at least half of this in planting what was a fairly barren and desolate railways-driven kind of site. And now it's actually quite pretty. And I think it's had a benefit that goes beyond just their society. Some of the schools have done some greening campaigns as well, and some recycling stuff. And a lot of the service clubs have used this money to provide service outcomes. So it'd be nice if we found a little way of having a chart about how many boxes get ticked in terms of the outcomes, so that people can see where this money's gone. Otherwise, there's probably a perception that these mobs are just sitting on this money somehow and paying their electricity bill with it. And I know that's absolutely not the case. So it'd be great if we could somehow capture through the applications, if not going back, certainly going forward, what gets done with it. How many people have been helped with this grant money, or how many people have been educated or trained through some of the stuff that the community garden's done. Because I think that's a much better way of summing up what's happened with the money. And I agree with all the volunteer hours added. It's a huge, huge contribution to the city for over 16 years, $342,000. I think it's been well invested. But it doesn't look like that at the moment, but it is, I think, a really good report for us to use as a springboard to spreading that information and promoting the fund, and then us reflecting on, well, what are we actually trying to achieve? Because we have the guidelines, but this might make us think a bit harder about what we want to do over time, particularly with repeat applicants. But thank you for the report and bringing those matters to our attention. Any further debate of this item? There being none, Councillor Nguyen, wish to sum up? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Good discussion. Next item is item 13, Council Member Reports and Briefings. Are there any? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I'd like to report that I attended the Clifton Street annual Christmas party, and also that I took part in the North Adelaide Croquet Club Sponsors Tournament as part of the Prospect Council team, along with Deputy Mayor Larwood and his Ivy. And congratulations, winners.
There's counting.
Very good.
Yes, it was very good time spent there, and catch up with a lot of people and at the Croquet Club, and learn a few more new skills with the Croquet Club.
Thank you. Any further council member? Councillor Ripp.
Yeah, just want to pass on some positive feedback that I received and from a resident, Evelyn in the East, who wanted to praise the staff member Ian. That's all she told me. She wanted me to do it at the council meeting to acknowledge his response in regards to a cat management complaint, and she just wanted to say that she was really happy with staff's the approach by Ian, and also how he supported her request. So I just thought I'd acknowledge that. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the terrific Prospect event. It's actually the first time I've been to the event, even though been a resident a few years. I just didn't have the opportunity to go, and it was I loved it. It was excellent. My wife really enjoyed it as well. She said that it was just exciting to see that the road also activated in the way it was. And although when we rocked up early, the numbers looked like we weren't sure what the weather was going to do on the night, but the sheer numbers rocked up as the evening went on, and I actually really enjoyed my first experience at the event. I thought it was a great showcase, and I thought all the staff that were there and all the volunteers did an excellent job with it. So just want to acknowledge the efforts there. And also want to pass on some feedback of thanks. The Broadview Baptist Church contacted me to pass on their thanks to Council for the support towards the annual Christmas party as well. So there's a few quick items that I've received some feedback on.
Thank you. Any further member reports? No, in the case, we'll move on. Motions on notice nil, questions with notice nil. We have a confidential item, appointment of the East Waste Independent Chair. There's a recommendation, part 1, that we go into confidence to receive that report. So we're happy to move that way. Councillor Ripp, to speak to it. Have a seconder. Councillor Pearce, wish to speak to it. Further debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll just shut the down to silence. Thank you.